would like to share my experience during the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction while I was stargazing at the beach in a very sacred land that is previously cultivated by indigenous people. While I was experiencing the sunset transition into the dark night, I had this vision. It was sort of a series of visions that happened so quickly that I cannot grab them, right? It is as though there was multiple lifetimes and multiple timelines all kind of emerging at once, and it was happening at the speed of light. So it was hard to fully grasp it, right? As though when it kind of brought about this awareness that when we do die, we realize how fast life is. Like a single lifetime can be just like just a thought that comes into our mind. But when we're in it, when we're in the density of it, right, we're in the physical as we are in this lifetime, it has this appearance, because we're in gravity, right, it has this appearance that time is linear, right, that time is happening day by day, week by week, month by month. But when you're outside of gravity, right, when you've transcended gravity, right, in death, it's the ultimate transcendence, right? It's like you're not in gravity, you're not in density, you're just in this, you're not a linear time. Like there's no sense of day, there's no sense of year, right? There's no sense of age. There is maybe sounds, color, light, sort of an experience, an interaction, a kind of relationship, some kind of connection, right? But really, the only thing that we really, I guess, recall is the connection. Because all of the color, the sound, the shapes, the energy, the experience, the relationship can change. And the connection we have is how we're able to decipher it. So even when we have dreams, like we have dreams and it seems as though they're organized in such a way where you have to decipher it, right? Where there's meanings through symbols. And in order to kind of uncover what these symbols mean, is that you have to use your imagination, but you also have to connect to your you have to have a connection, right? So while I was experiencing this vision and this sort of series of visions that were all kind of emerging and happening at once, I saw myself, it was a connection of feeling an ancient civilization. It felt though I was in a period where I felt like me, like this version of myself, but I even saw my eyes as though my eyes that I have in this body is the same eyes in that lifetime. And I was brought back to the Middle East. And I've always had a fascination with the Middle East. But I saw myself as a Middle Eastern young girl, and it was in an ancient civilization, definitely more tribal. I feel like it was definitely during a period where there most likely was kings, so it was definitely in a patriarchal period of time, so not too far back. But it was less populated. There was more, I guess, kinship, right? We were more of community-based. The city was very much basically one large tribe, it seems like. But I remember these connections I felt with, like, people that are, I guess I call part of my soul family, that I just felt so many lifetimes experience in different ways, in different like lessons. And some of these, I guess, soul family members I don't even know or have never met, right, in this lifetime, but it's though I can recall so many different lifetimes, and it all happened like so quickly. But I believe I was brought back to this girl, right? This Middle Eastern girl that was myself. She had the same eyes that I have, same big brown eyes, and she kind of had a similar look to me as well. Except she had, I guess, more was distinct, right? Had that kind of distinct Arabian type of appearance, very, very alluring, very intense, very captivating, mesmerizing, right? And there was just this connection, right? It's like reconnecting with where I've been, right? And it was almost like I could feel like how far I've gone, right? It's almost like I was seeing a journey, and I was seeing a part in the journey where I was this Middle Eastern girl, and I would say is at least like, I don't know, 4,000 years ago. It seemed pretty early, like Middle East, pretty early. And it's almost like connecting with this girl that I felt was myself was sort of like patting myself on the back. It felt like that in the way I was like appreciating myself, like, wow, I've gone so far, like, you know, look at all these lifetimes, you know, and I could feel these different lifetimes, and I could feel different things that happened, that some of those things were not very easy things, right, to go through, but it happened so fast, you know. Even the soul family, I could feel how much of a rebellious person I've been in many lifetimes, and I've always been very eager to learn in many lifetimes, but also very much a person who had common sense in many lifetimes. And in many lifetimes that didn't really get me very far, right? Because when you're, you know, in a patriarchal age, like in the thick of it, like, you know, especially as a female, that doesn't necessarily give you a long life. But there are other times when I could feel so much breakthrough that happened within, I guess, that 4,000 years ago lifetime to 2020. And there's just an experience of like this spherical time, almost like time is not so far, right, away from each other, like 4,000 years ago versus now. There's a sort of singularity, a point where it kind of intersects, and it's not like so far to obtain the knowledge of that version of ourselves. And as though as I was looking through a window, like I was looking into a window, and it was like a portal, right? It felt like a portal, or what do I imagine, like a fifth dimensional consciousness, where it is though our connection to energy, our connection to our Sachic record, or connection to our own intention and our evolution kind of gives us access to more of a spherical nature of time and space, where you can kind of like hop into these different, I don't know, these different versions of ourselves. Like you can kind of hop into that and get a glimpse or get a view, you know, to kind of retrieve or to remember something that could help you in this lifetime. And I think the more that we step into our fifth dimensional consciousness, the more that becomes available to us. When we're in like a 2D or a 3-dimensional like consciousness that we've, you know, most of us have been in, or, you know, we don't really have had a society that's really trained us in transcendental meditation or death practice or death meditation. You know, we live in a society that kind of collectively fears death and sees transcendental meditation as something to fear, right? But it's like the working on like the death meditation and transcendental like meditation just through being on this planet at this time during the Aquarian age has really sort of unlocked that fifth dimensional mind that we all have. So it's not necessarily you have to be like some kind of Tibetan monk and meditate for 8 hours a day to kind of get that adjustment to the brain. I feel like just being on the planet during this highly, this technology age is gonna give you the adjustment. So it's kind of like I could feel that fifth dimensional upgrade to the brain, where all of a sudden my idea of time and space and lifetimes and just the way I could view history, like even future history, it became like different, right, than what I've been taught or what I've gathered through my, history class of looking at history more from it's very far, right? It's something I can't reach. It's like far away, right? It's something that I can't really sync myself with because it's distant from me. I'm disconnected from that. It's not a part of me. Maybe a part of my history, but it's not a part of me in the version that I am. The only way I can really connect is like through compassion, right? Of trying to understand the life of these people in the past, right? Or the life that could be in the future. But this felt so different. This felt like that fifth dimensional spherical nature of time and space. It more felt like I was looking into an Akashic record, right? Like I was putting an intention, like maybe an unconscious intention for having some kind of revelation or some insight that I was needing, that to help me complete something, right? I think looking at it as like an Akashic record, time, space, continuum, it's like we go into it with something that we're completing, right? Like we're wanting to come full circle. I call it like a creative completion, where once we kind of have these sort of life lessons and we master these things and we have breakthroughs, it's like we're presented these aspects or versions of ourselves as like a way of like threading it all together, right? From like a lifetime 4,000 years ago in like the Middle East, where I'm just like a Middle Eastern girl in a sort of tribal town or tribal community, to now and getting to see how I've completed a cycle, right? I've gone and completed an entire cycle when it comes to my understanding of humanity, right? Humanity in the different sort of lifetimes I've had with humanity, and the seeing of the different things and the different interactions and experiences. And I think this particular download or vision that I had was revealing to me like the completion of the patriarchal age, right? And my sort of movement in it, right? I've had many lifetimes in the patriarchal age, and particularly a great resonance with the Middle East, with the patriarchal age, and seeing like myself in the thick of the patriarchal age, and seeing myself now kind of coming out of it, or sort of awakening to a different dimension, right? Or maybe not necessarily a different dimension, but a shifting reality. Like I'm coming out of something, right? And getting to see the challenges, like in a like speed of light, seeing the challenges, the difficulties through these it's almost like these karmas that I've had to work through, right? It's almost like seeing myself problem solve, right? In many lifetimes, and seeing that completion, right? That I've problem solved. I resolved this patriarchal age within myself. Like I've come to peace with something, right? With my relationship to the patriarchal age, and how it has been in some lifetimes quite like angry, right? And other lifetimes I'm so super radical and rebellious, and then other lifetimes I'm starting to understand what's going on and why it's going on, like getting, smarter and wise about it. And then this version of myself now, where I'm entering into a completely new age and getting to see myself kind of transition out of a patriarchal mindset, right? Or patriarchal solely, just the patriarchal society, right? And getting to see how I've come to peace with the patriarch in me and in society. And I no longer feel scared of the patriarch. I no longer feel like angry. I no longer feel like trauma, or no longer feel like this like hostility, like I need to hide, or I need to keep myself away or secret. There's just this feeling of like being content, right, with the whole identity of the patriarch from a perspective of being a female, right, and seeing myself a female 4,000 years ago in the Middle East in a pretty heavy patriarchal community, we'll say, right, that had like a king, right, and this vision I had, it was like there was a king, and it was very like male, right, influence, male seeming dominated, and seeing like myself shed the fear, right, that I maybe have gathered from these lifetimes of being, you know, a human in this patriarchal time. And also there's a feeling of really honoring the feminine. Like I remember in this lifetime really honoring the feminine, like the women around me, feeling such a strong connection to my grandmother, my mother, connection to the women in the tribe who were so resilient, right, who were basically the voice of reason, right, during times where, you know, ego of man could, you know, get very, very restless, right? Is almost like seeing the woman as like the rest, like she helped man to rest his heart, right? Rest his heart in something that had substance, that had wisdom, that had that made sense to him about like the whole the whole spirituality of lifetimes, and the wheel of karma, and the wheel of turning ages in existence, and our kind of movement in it. So it was just this vision. It's hard to explain and describe it, because again, it's like working on a fifth dimensional brain, like a brain, I guess. And because it was presented with me like with a feeling of sound, but then also I could see color, I could see shape, I could see light, I could see movement, I could actually see appearances. I could kind of go into it even more, almost like I'm walking in through the window, right? And I could kind of see. It was not necessarily like I was seeing, okay, this is what people were doing, doing this, they look like this. It was more so the relationship I had with, that version of myself had a relationship with that lifetime. And getting to view into like how my relationship with humanity has evolved over, I don't know, many lifetimes. And how that relationship has evolved, my relationship with humanity and maybe the patriarch has evolved through, I saw in that Middle Eastern girl's eyes, through the willingness to learn, right? Through the willingness to, kind of be a rebel in some way, where you're wanting to not remain stuck. You don't want to be stuck into something, like stuck in a belief, stuck in, it's always like this, and it'll always be like this. I'm in the eternity of this, right? The king is the eternal being, and he's going to be the same forever and ever, and that's kind of stubborn, right? Is getting to like the willingness to be open and to not hold on to anything, right? A belief system, to not even hold on to a trauma, hold on to a transgression that was done to me, or maybe I did, right? I got involved in the karma wheel out of desperation, or out of feeling abandoned, or feeling like struggle, right? Being hostilities around. And then seeing myself evolve further, right? And connect with with a sense of freedom, right? I saw in that version of myself, like connecting to a sense of freedom was through honoring. It was like honoring my soul in a subtle way, right? It didn't have to be like a huge meditation of 8 hours, right? Just in a subtle way, as seeing as a female, like honoring my soul through being rebellious enough not to give into an idea that I'm bound, that this is how it is, this is how it always would be. So it's like it presented a way out. Always there was a way out. Always there was an opening, a breakthrough. Always there's, right? Even if it wasn't in that lifetime, there was always something, an idea, a practice, a prayer that presented this idea that I am not bound to anything. I'm not just in that life or in this lifetime, that I'm connected to all the others. So it brought this sense of peace that though I'm going through this, and this lifetime may have its particular belief system and its particular experience that may seem very set, like this is just how it is. But there was always this like connection outside of that I think is unique to, I guess, my own Asatric record, and the ability to see into other windows, other possibilities, other portals of humanity, and seeing humanity in deep patriarchal and in deep matriarchal, and then seeing the transition of that, and then seeing the great destruction, and then seeing the great sort of advancements, Atlantis civilization. So I think for me that vision, it was like revealing the completion from being, I guess, incarnated on Earth at a time, maybe even before 4,000 years ago, where I was on Earth during a time where it was very similar to what we're having now, or what we will have 2,000 years from now, where we were in an advanced civilization where we were in full awareness of cosmic vibration, full awareness of like metaphysical realities, and full awareness of like physics, and the kind of transcendental sort of consciousness, and seeing interactions with like star beings, right, of other planetary systems, other life forms, intelligent life forms like Pleiadians or Orions or Sirians, and kind of seeing that maybe at least 30,000 years ago, right? That's what I feel with the Lyran beings. And then coming to now where we're just starting. It's almost like just starting, like 30,000 years ago, there was a golden age, and now it's just starting to make way towards a civilization that will become very similar to that golden age that was 30,000 years ago, before, I guess, the last ice age, that's associated with Atlantis and pre-dynastic Egypt, that was during a time that was not matriarchal or patriarchal. I think this time that I have a connection to, like coming full circle, it was very similar to what our future civilization will be, in the way that it's not going to be patriarchal and matriarchal. It's going to have this kind of reconciliation between man and woman, this kind of equality, this sort of respect for both, and the kind of honoring of both, and strengthening both, not atrophying one so other, right, or not being a servant to one, or not being bound to one in a codependence, or a sort of worshipping, right? It felt more of civilization that was able to move out of the karma wheel, right, is the best way I can describe it, right? Move out of the karma wheel through like a Buddhist perspective is like moving out of the samskaras, which is like the cause and effect, right? It's about a karmic debt, or where we have these sort of ties, or we have these issues, right? We have this sort of dissonance in ourselves, right? This kind of wounds, or this trauma, or these unresolved lessons that are kind of in us that have to be dissolved or smoothed out or brought into fairness, right? And need to be neutralized so that we can kind of move out of the karma wheel, right? That's out of anger and being, resentment, being not loving ourselves, being full of hate, being selfish, arrogant, these type of things, and moving out of that into felt like a civilization that really had a strong sense of dharma, right? And when we're in a patriarchal lens, it doesn't seem like that would be possible, right? Because when we look at our history in the patriarchal experience, it doesn't seem like we've ever upheld a civilization on earth that had or even a society that was able to uphold a dharma for multiple generations without the sort of jealousy or the greed or the deception or the type of competition, right, with other neighboring communities or something like that. But this felt completely like there's individualism, like a very defined individualism, but then there was also this respect for the differences between humans and between other species, and also between other star beings, cosmic faring beings who come to Earth, right, to share, right, to interact, to explore, to kind of help humanity understand the movement of the universe, right, within the Galactic Confederation and what's going on within that, and our part to play, and how we can choose the best attitude towards our own civilization as humans in this remote past. So this is kind of the best way I can describe this vision and what has moved through me, and how this is kind of setting up my fifth dimensional brain in the way that I view my future and the future of humanity within 500, 2,000 years, where I really don't see humanity as we're destroying ourselves and the planet. I feel like if we destroy anything, it's going to be ourselves, not necessarily the planet, because Mother Gaia will prevail, right? And if we do any sort of nuclear type of stuff that could kill the Earth, right, nuclear, I feel even that, we just are creating the karma, right, that we've been in these karmas where we've extincted ourselves. And it would just be like we didn't learn our lesson and we have to start all over and hopefully get it next time, right? But this Earth is getting older, right? It's not as young as it was in the last two extinctions of, humanity. Earth is pretty vital, pretty still considered adolescent or young adult, I would say, getting up into, more of maybe mid-aged adult, but still pretty young, right? But still, right, I think the greatest lesson or test for the humanity as a whole and the collective is about, did we learn from our mistakes, right? Are we too prideful to learn from our mistakes? Are we too prideful to heal, right? And actually resolve ourselves in this lifetime, right? And are we too stubborn, right, to to evolve ourselves beyond our belief systems that we may hold so tight to, right? We have such an attachment to. And with, 2,000 years from now, are we willing to preserve our emotional and spiritual connection? Are we willing to preserve and safeguard our spiritual emotional connection? Or will we try to tamper with that, try to control that, thinking that that's going to give us a greater control over our technology age, right? And greater question can be about, do we have faith in humanity, right? Or are we going to give in to doubt and negative self-fulfilling prophecies that actually are a real thing? Negative self-fulfilling prophecies are a real thing. We can get into that, and we have. And allowed that to cause a great pessimism and then a great negativity that brought about our destroying of ourselves and each other in the kind of wrath of our own sort of self-hate, right? And with, moving forward, will we listen to Mother Gaia? Will we be able to relax and let the transformation happen, or will we try to force and control and will ourselves to do what we think is best for ourselves? Because relaxation, in relaxing into the unknown and trusting nature, right? The order of the universe, right? It can seem very daunting and seems very intense and overwhelming to do such thing. But in doing that, we're riding in the wind, right? Instead of going against the wind, thinking that, I'm just gonna use all my energy from my motor, right? Like I got the boat, right? The motor in the boat, I'm just gonna use the energy. But really catching the wind would be so much more gliding. It would be so much more energy less, right, costly, and just more of an experience of being in the divine timing of nature, like learning how to be in the wave, in the wind trail of nature, and capturing that and letting it use it to boost you forward naturally without needing to be forcing something and exhausting all the energy to do that. So I think these are sort of lessons that I see for humanity in choosing a prophecy for humanity, because we can choose a negative fulfilling prophecy, but we can also choose a prophecy that the Pleiadians have for us, as for example, the Lyra and the Syrians, which is about humanity becoming advanced with the consciousness, not just advanced in our ability to, do drones, right, or to, have more social media platforms, right? But in our connection, our psychic awareness of this universe, right? A sort of metaphysical, maybe even a sort of physics type of understanding that, a sort of metaphysical and physics type of, I'll say, connection to the universe does not need to come off initially as scientific. Mandala has a metaphysical quality to it, right? A mandala, a mantra, a sort of Buddhist teaching that has nothing scientific to do, right? The teaching, right, of a death practice that kind of brings about the awareness of transcending time and space and the singularity, and being able to access different dimensions and realms, right? Or even through art, and the way that art can be an expression of different realms, right? And you're navigating through them, and you're showing how you navigated that and how you even transmuted that and shifted out of that. So I think, a lot of the metaphysical spirituality is a real thing that is not a religion, right? I think that it's just a fifth dimensional brain, in the way that that fifth dimensional brain, which was awakened and upgraded, right, by this winter solstice, is like, now we're going into the winter, and now we get to sit with it, and we get to be subtle with it, and we really get to go into like contemplation with it. And I think this winter, if we allow ourselves to relax into the fifth dimensional brain, relax into the information that's coming to us, no matter how expansive or indifferent it is to our beliefs or our kind of attachments or our fears, right? I think that we can actually really cultivate a visionary self. And I think a lot of indigenous people, Native American people, humans that really kind of were, I would say, this founding people for the astrology and cosmology and evolutionary sort of knowledge that we have in more advanced civilizations that are not necessarily, belonging to indigenous, right, culture, that's more later after, right? And I think, with all of these advanced civilizations, I think of the reason why they can hold it for a long period, like the prosperity, they can hold it more than 7 generations, like maybe, longer than that, without major type of kind of destruction, right, happening, is that there's a willingness to relax into the evolution, and a willing to adapt to the evolution, to be prepared and to create the prophecy. And that is, it's like writing the, destiny of your civilization, a prophecy that you can work your personal growth into that, right? So I think with Earth, because, there's great flood, there's an ice age, there's, sort of volcanic experience, maybe even like, meteor type of thing, right? There's been all kinds of catastrophic events that we can't like control, like solar flares that may be very like big and, very fiery and destructive. But I think the more that we have that metaphysical awareness of that we are very much more of a cosmic being than just a human flesh, or just solely a human experience, I think that it really does bring us out of just ourselves, and it brings us more into the Dharma, which is everything to do with like how can I transmute these things? How can I transform these things? How can I even transcend these things, right? As like a great problem solver, as a great metaphysical truth, right? Which I think of great metaphysical truth, right? That our soul and our spirit, like a mandala or mantra knows, right? Is how can I transfer knowledge, like a transmission, right? So that I can benefit, or help other generations. How can I transfer knowledge? Okay, to that can be, utilized for many years to come. How can I transmute experience, right? That's also metaphysical. How can I transmute experience, right? That's about realms, dealing with the karma wheel and the realms and the dimensions, and how can we get unstuck, right? And then the transformation is how can I shapeshift, right? From one like appearance to a different, from one lineage to another. How can I transform a society, a belief system that may be stuck, or that may be like repeating the same thing, right? Becoming redundant. How can I transform, right? How can I transform the earthbound, right? The being bound into something that is more free-flowing, right? That's the birthing of consciousness, the transformation. How can I become more free-flowing instead of bound? And this is this, and separated. All the realms, dimensions are separated. Time is and space is separated. right? That transformation is like the consciousness is like the singularity, going back to the one, right? The source, the Holy Spirit, we can call it. And then transcendence, I think with metaphysical, like spirituality, with the fifth dimensional brain, has everything to do with how can I completely let go of every idea, notion, every belief system, and just empty it out, return to this, a pure state of reality that has a sort of an autonomy that is liberated, and an authenticity that is unbroken, that is threaded into everything, but is also embodied in a soul energy. That's the transcendence. And I think the metaphysical realities, or divinity, right, is like the having that 5D brain is like having that sort of movement where you start to see yourself as the evolutionist rather than just you're in evolution. I think that's a very different brain when you just, the brain is just evolving, as in just you surrender right to it. And the evolutionist is very much in this fifth dimensional brain is like, there's evolution and I'm evolving, but how can I use it to my advantage? How can I bring Dharma into this, right? Bring Dharma into the evolution, in the evolving movement of me or humanity, or, right? I'm on this planet, right? I'm in the universe. How can I bring my Dharma into that? How can I bring my own unique destiny and my own purpose, or my own soul rite of passage or voice of reason into reality, right? And I think that's where we talk about the evolutionist is like you're using the natural progressions or evolution of your planet, or you're human, right? And you're a part of this planetary movement forward, right? And how can you kind of use that to fit your ecstatic Dharma into all of that? So it's like synchronizing your soul with a planet that has its own consciousness and its own collective movement, right? How can you make the earth so the earth's movement is also a part of your movement as a soul Dharma, so that you're not just in it, just being pulled by it, but you're also moving it through your own soul processing, is what I want to say. So these is kind of just contemplations on the day that I wanted to share as a way to encourage everyone to allow your fifth dimensional brain to speak, even if it fumbles, right? Even if it stutters, even if it seems dyslexic at times, to just kind of let it unveil itself and allow it to guide you to color, right? Like painting or reading, right? To people who may sort of activate a kind of gift or a talent, and allow that to be the fifth dimensional brain unveiling or revealing how you can step more fully into, I call it, your metaphysical divinity. That I think is really, I think metaphysical divinity is like where the process of your soul, right, which is so complex, so intergalactic, interstellar, coming into a finite space, right, which can be the physics, right, gravity, the finite space. And then the divinity is like, how do you bring your infinite into the finite, right? Your soul's processing. How do you bring such infinite dharma into a finite container that may seem limited and restricted? How do you evolutionize that limitation, that restriction? How do you problem solve it, right? The challenge, the adversity, the difficulty, right? That can seem so like stubborn and prideful, like it's just not going to move and it's just, that is it. How do you evolutionize that, right? If evolution says that, it's just going to be like this, right? If evolution is saying, okay, well, based on our current movement, right, as human beings, okay, we're going to destroy this planet in X amount of years, right? That's kind of evolution, right, based off of the past and based off of decisions made now. How do you evolutionize? How can you bring your soul processing, your soul's Sachic record to this finite space with its own sort of belief systems, its own wiring, and how can you wire it so that it's it's synchronized with your own soul's movement? I think that's the greatest kind of like divination. It's where you're not just caught into a prophecy, right, based off of the earth and humanity. That you have your own metaphysical divination that has a soul processing that can evolutionize the prophecies into sort of, the Dharma is like a way to ultimately embody, or I would say not embody, integrate the earth through your own cosmic remembrance, I want to say, right? Because that cosmic remembrance is like that infinite. So it's like integrating that cosmic remembrance through that earth body. And that becomes like this creative renaissance that is established through your own will. I think I marvel at this kind of vision of humans, because it really showcases like what's on the other side of transcendence, right? What's on the other side of transcendence when we're not caged by the finite and we're just going for whatever evolution and prophecies that has gained merit through many generations or thousands of years, right? And what's on the other side of that, right? What's a metaphysical divination that is able to bring an infinite type of configuration of energy, right, that seems so indifferent to this earth grid, right, and the earth matrix or the earth, mind, right, and the earth finite container, but yet can shape, it's almost like shape the earth container, shape the earth grid into its own vision of itself. And that's what I will leave you guys with, as in sort of looking at coming full circle from one advanced civilization 30,000 years ago when we think of the Great Sphinx and the Black High Priestesses, right, connected to Black Madonna, and then going to a time now where we're going into a technology age, an Aquarian age, that is basically bringing us back to the same civilization that we experienced with Atlantis, right? Except this will be very different. But I think there's so much negative self-fulfilling prophecy, that there's so much cosmic being support, like, you know, star beings, to really get us to that other side of transcendence, where we can get the soul processing of Earth into this body, right, this vessel, and the awareness that we have, right, and start to use that to really unlock and crack open, right, almost like hack the finite, right, almost hacking the finite, almost hacking the evolution of Earth and the evolution of humanity based off of repetitive patterns and belief systems and prophecies. That is kind of where we start to open up, okay, that's the space where human beings have evolved, not just in technology, but evolved within the emotionality, the spirituality, the metaphysics not being just something of space or time, but human in space and time, not just metaphysics as space and time, you know, this great, understanding of dimensions and realms and the singularity and how to move through, you know, the speed of light, the speed of thought, right? But human in that, how does human not just understand that, but how can humans actually move into that? How do humans go through not through this time space that metaphysically opens up into other realms and dimensions? How can humans walk into that? Not just in the mind, but in a complete society, or complete, like, evolution enters into that, where it's not just an idea, it's not just a science, right? It becomes a human interaction, a human connection. So I think that's what we're entering into.